Picture this. You're just following the team like any normal day, expecting a quiet off-season. And suddenly, some possibilities start popping up that could seriously change things, on both offense and defense. Nothing is official yet, but it's the kind of situation that makes you stop and think, what if this actually happens? And what makes it even more interesting is that we're not talking about unknown players. These are experienced guys who can still produce, especially in the right system. So now, it turns into a real debate. Do you trust what you already have, or bring in proven pieces to try and take a bigger step right now? Leave your opinion in the comments. And don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to stay well informed. Something unexpected just surfaced, and if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, this could quietly turn into one of the most intriguing developments of the offseason. Because a veteran star wide receiver just said something that might change how we look at this offense moving forward. Here's what happened. DeAndre Hopkins, speaking casually while at an airport, was asked about his future in the NFL. And in a moment that didn't feel scripted, didn't feel forced, he dropped a statement that immediately caught attention. While talking about his former teammate Kyler Murray, he made it clear how strong that relationship still is, calling him family, praising his accuracy, backing him against criticism. But then came the line that matters most to Vikings fans. If the Vikings need me, they know I'll be there. That wasn't a rumor. That wasn't speculation. That came directly from Hopkins himself. And suddenly, you start connecting the dots. Because when you look at the current structure of this Vikings offense, it's already loaded at the top. Justin Jefferson is elite. Jordan Addison has proven he can be dynamic both outside and in the slot. TJ Hawkinson is still a major presence. So the question becomes, what's missing? Not a superstar, not another alpha. What's missing is a reliable, experienced wide receiver who can thrive without needing volume. Someone who can win one-on-one matchups against third corners. Someone who understands spacing, timing, and how to make life easier for a quarterback adjusting to a system. And that's exactly where DeAndre Hopkins fits. Now, let's be clear about where Hopkins is in his career right now. He's not the same dominant force from his Houston Texans days or even his peak stretch in Arizona. Last season, his numbers were modest: 22 receptions, 330 yards, and 2 touchdowns while playing a limited role. He wasn't the focal point of the offense, but just 1 year prior, in 2023, he still crossed the 1,000-yard mark and found the end zone 7 times. That version of Hopkins didn't disappear. It just wasn't fully utilized in his most recent situation. And here's where it gets interesting. If you bring Hopkins into Minnesota, you're not asking him to carry the offense. You're not asking him to be WR1 or even WR2. You're asking him to be efficient, to be smart, and to capitalize on favorable matchups created by Jefferson and Addison. That's a completely different role. And in that role, Hopkins could be extremely effective. Think about it. Defenses are already stretched thin, trying to contain Jefferson. Addison adds another layer of versatility. Hawkinson demands attention in the middle of the field. Now imagine inserting a veteran like Hopkins into that equation, lining him up against weaker coverage, linebackers, or third corners. That's where this becomes dangerous. There's also another layer to this that can't be ignored: the familiarity with Kyler Murray. Hopkins didn't just mention him casually. He defended him. He praised him. He showed genuine respect. That kind of connection matters, especially if there's a transition happening offensively and you're trying to create comfort and chemistry quickly. Adding Hopkins isn't just about production. It's about stability, trust, and experience. Now, from a roster-building perspective, this move also makes sense. Instead of using a premium draft pick on a wide receiver, something the Vikings have done well developing internally, you can address other needs. Cornerback, safety, defensive tackle. Those are areas where depth and talent are still needed. And internally, there are already options like Ty Felton, who showed flashes in the preseason with his ability to get open and generate yards after the catch. But relying solely on development comes with risk. Signing Hopkins reduces that risk. It gives you a proven option, a player who understands the game at a high level, a player who doesn't need to be the star to make an impact. And if the contract ends up being a veteran minimum or team-friendly deal, the upside far outweighs the cost. So now the question shifts from, is this possible, to, why wouldn't you consider it? Because when a player like DeAndre Hopkins openly says he'd be willing to come to Minnesota, you don't ignore that. You evaluate it seriously. And you ask yourself, could this be the move that quietly elevates the entire offense without disrupting its structure? I want to hear from you now. Would you sign DeAndre Hopkins in this role for the Vikings? Drop a Y for yes or N for no, and tell me how you see him fitting into this offense. And just when you think this storyline couldn't get more intriguing, another major development drops. And this one could have just as big of an impact, but on the defensive side of the ball. Because while Vikings fans are still processing the idea of DeAndre Hopkins potentially joining this offense, a completely different opportunity has quietly emerged, one that could reshape the identity of Brian Flores' defense. We're talking about Christian Wilkins. According to reports, Wilkins fully intends to play this upcoming season, even as he continues to rehab a foot injury. And here's the part that really stands out. 26 teams have already reached out, waiting for the moment he's ready. That tells you everything you need to know about how this league still views him. This isn't just another available player. This is one of the better defensive tackles in football when healthy. And for the Vikings, this is where things start to feel very real. Because there's already a built-in connection here. Back in 2024, when Wilkins was a free agent coming off a strong run with the Miami Dolphins, Minnesota showed serious interest. They did extensive research. He was very much on their radar as a potential major signing before he ultimately landed with the Las Vegas Raiders on a bigger deal. That interest didn't come from nowhere. It came from a coaching staff that understood exactly what he brings, and more importantly, how he fits. Brian Flores knows Wilkins well. They overlapped in Miami during some of the most productive years of Wilkins's career. That familiarity matters. That trust matters. And when you're talking about adding a piece to your defensive front, scheme fit is everything. Now look at the current state of the Vikings' defensive tackle room. There's promise, there's effort, but there's also a clear need for more top-end talent and depth. Jalen Redmond has been solid, arguably the most reliable presence in that group, but he can't do it alone. Levi Drake Rodriguez has shown flashes, and there's hope that Tyron Ingram Dawkins can take a leap into a consistent contributor. But right now, that's still projection, not certainty. And that's where Wilkins changes everything. Because if you insert a healthy Christian Wilkins into that rotation, you're no longer hoping for development. You're adding proven production. This is a player who can stop the run, collapse the pocket from the interior, and create chaos for opposing quarterbacks. He's not one-dimensional. He's disruptive in multiple phases of the game. Now imagine pairing that with what the Vikings already have on the edges. Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Greenard, Dallas Turner. You suddenly start to see the vision. A defensive front that doesn't need to rely heavily on blitzing. A front that can generate pressure with 4. And if you've followed Brian Flores' philosophy, you know how important that is to him. He's always talked about wanting that balance, being able to create pressure without constantly exposing the secondary. And adding a player like Wilkins brings you closer to that reality. There's also the financial angle to consider. Because due to the injury concerns and what reportedly happened during his time in Las Vegas, which led to his release, this likely isn't a massive contract situation anymore. This could realistically be a veteran minimum or low-risk, high-reward type of deal. And if that's the case, this becomes one of the biggest potential steals of the offseason. You're talking about a player who, if healthy, can outperform that contract by a wide margin. A player who elevates everyone around him. A player who allows the Vikings to approach the draft with flexibility instead of desperation. That's the key word here, flexibility. Because if Minnesota can secure a move like this, they don't have to force a pick at defensive tackle. They can truly go best player available. They can address cornerback. They can add depth elsewhere. They can build the roster the way elite teams do, by staying patient and letting the board come to them. And there's one more layer to this: personality. Wilkins is known for bringing energy, intensity, and a unique presence to the locker room. Yes, there have been some reports about issues during his time with the Raiders, and yes, the medical concerns are real, but this is exactly the kind of calculated risk that can define a front office's off-season. Because if it works, you've added a tone setter to your defense. You've added someone who helps create that identity Flores has been building. You've added a piece that could take a good defense and push it towards something even more dangerous. So now, step back and look at the full picture. A potential offensive boost with DeAndre Hopkins. A possible defensive upgrade with Christian Wilkins. Two veteran players. Two very different roles, but both with the ability to outperform expectations if placed in the right situation. And Minnesota might just be that situation. Now it comes down to execution. Do the Vikings take advantage of these opportunities? Do they lean into these low-risk, high-upside moves? Or do they stick with internal development and the draft? That's what will define the next phase of this offseason. But now I want to hear from you. If you could only choose one, who would you prioritize? DeAndre Hopkins or Christian Wilkins? And more importantly, do you think these are the kind of moves that can push the Vikings closer to being true contenders? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like the video if you're excited about these possibilities. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything as this story continues to develop. Go Vikings!